Let me get it here. About I learned how to play jazz guitar in 7 days.
All right, so let me be completely and totally honest for the first time in a while. I'm not happy, like really not happy. Now, I know that's a very strong way to start, so let me give you some backstory so you might understand a little.
By the way, I've never seen a video by this content creator, and but it looks very good, right? You can see a high quality camera. He has a nice flow in his speech. I will be posting a link to this video, of course, in the chat later. Also, if you watch this on YouTube, there's a link to this video in the description. Check it out. I'm definitely going to watch more of his videos. It's very entertaining. Or, well, I don't even know that yet, but it looks very good already. High quality content creator.
Little bit of context as to where I'm coming from. You see, the day was January 20th, 2023, and you're probably like, Mike, what the heck is that random date all about? Well, you see, that was my 9-year anniversary of the day when I first picked up the electric guitar, which was a really, really big milestone if you know anything about me. Back in college, I was called at times a serial hobbyist, which means I just jumped from one passion to the next and could never really find my thing. But there was something so special about my connection to this instrument, right? Like when I first picked it up, there was just this initial spark. It was like something.
It's funny because I'm a serial instrumentalist, or maybe also hobbies. I had so many hobbies, and I remember, it's a little bit off topic, but I remember that I always wanted to play trumpet, but my father said, no, that's too loud, no trumpet, at least not yet. Why don't you try violin or piano? So I went for violin, and then very soon after that, I said, I want to play, I don't even remember, like piano. And then my father said, you have to be careful, because the more instruments you learn, you become a sort of kind of a musical clown, right? One of those guys that plays 4 bars on one instrument, then another instrument. You want to stick to one thing. And I think he was right about that, but I still did it. I still, I don't know, I think I can play like 10 instruments. I managed to reach a quite high level on maybe 5 of them, but right now I have to agree to the fact that it's probably better to stick to 1 or 2 instruments. So, you know, I played the high level piano and bandoneon and double bass, for instance, but I've kind of decided to stop that. No more double bass, maybe for fun on a jam. No more piano, maybe for fun on a jam, and no more bandoneon. That's kind of weird because I've played it for so long. There's many concerts of me playing bandoneon on YouTube. I have 4 albums, but I don't want to do it anymore. I haven't played bandoneon since the pandemic. That's a long time ago, right? Not even like a scale or something, or like a one song. I did it a little bit in the pandemic for some videos, but you know, I'm gonna stick to violin and guitar. Those are the instruments I'm most passionate about. Those are the instruments I spend most hours on, and that's what I want to do. So I'll stick to those instruments. Hello, Coolmaker.
Special that I could connect to musically. And all I wanted to do was absorb as much information as possible in the moment. And it was this really beautiful thing. But as of lately, I've really felt like this spark has kind of diminished. And not my spark for playing the guitar and enjoying music, but that initial spark to learn the instrument and absorb all of that information. And I still do the occasional church gig where I play. I still make videos that I love doing, and I still jam with friends and with my band. But I can't remember the last time I really pushed myself like I did in the early days, like to absorb all that information and to ignite that.
You know, that is, of course, not weird to hear. A lot of people have that. I remember talking about that with Stochelo Rosenberg, because, you know, he's been playing. I don't want to play. He's been playing the same way, but like his style of vocabulary, or the way he approaches improvisation, he's been playing basically like that since he was like 21 or something, right? And he never really changed that a lot, right? Of course, things change because, you know, you get more experience, you learn new tunes, you start playing with other people, they influence you. But, you know, like to really add something on top of your vocabulary that is sounds very different from what you did, you really need to sit down and actually start learning new ways of approaching improvisation. So you could learn new licks, right? New phrases by a guitar player that you've never studied before, or you could, I don't know, learn new skills or a new concept. So I remember at one point he said, you know what? I want to also start learning new vocabulary, because he saw me busy with that all the time, because I do that all the time, 24/7. He said, no, I want to dive into Joe Pass. And I remember him asking me what the best software for that was. So back then I said, no, you should try Transcribe. Right now I would probably say Soundslice, but he installed it on his computer, or I installed it for him on his computer, but he actually never did it. So when I asked him about it like a couple of years later, it's like, what happened to your Joe Pass project? He basically said, you know what? I started doing it, but it was just too much of a frustrating process, and I'm kind of happy with the way I play. And of course he should be one of the most influential guitar players in this style ever. But for me, I'm just addicted to learning new vocabulary. I do that all the time. And when I listen to music, even if it's not jazz, I'm always listening for, I don't know, interesting chord progression or an interesting lick or an interesting embellishment. And I can't wait to go home and try it out or write it down. It's just the way I am, which is very beneficial for the things I do, like my YouTube channel and the books I write and my Patreon. Of course, what's earlier, the chicken or the egg? I don't know. But for me, this works out really, really well.
Spark. And I think because of that, I've reached a juncture that a lot of guitar players have to face when you realize you're at a certain point in your life or at a certain point in your guitar playing journey. I'm just not...
Hello, Gudai Kana. Thank you for subbing.
The player that I want to be. And I want to be very candid about that. There are a lot of flaws and weaknesses in my guitar playing that I've been very reluctant to address because I know how much hard work it would take. And I remember how much hard work it took for me to just learn to strum a G chord. I was like, man, do I really want to go through that again? But I think with the instrument and with any passion you have in life, if you're not challenging yourself...
Yeah, that's also funny because I remember... about talking about G chord, I remember a classical guitar player, really high level classical guitar player. I'm talking about a solo level player. And she really wanted to get into gypsy jazz because she loved like the sound of it. And she learned some jungle solos, of course with the fingers and stuff. But she wanted to learn how to play rhythm. And but I don't know, she didn't know how, what kind of chords to play. So she came to my house. I think she came to my house, or did we meet at the conservatory? I don't know. I don't remember because it's a long time ago. And I showed her this chord, like G chord, G6-9, right? And it feels very easy for me to do that right now. It's like your thumb on the G, and then there's two strings on the second finger, right? The D and the G, and then the B, E, A. I showed her that chord. But there was no way she could play that. She was a very high-level classical player, but she couldn't play that chord at all. Like, it sounded like... And the reason was because in classical guitar playing, I didn't know that, you never fret two strings, adjacent strings, with any other finger but your first finger. And that's why those fingers of classical guitar players are round, right? Because then they can bar. Because for a bar chord, you have to make your fingers round. So they bar like this, and then they play lots of complicated stuff. But if you play two notes like this, they don't do that with the second finger. They do it with the first finger like this. So if they have to put their fingers backwards like this, like a violin player, it's very uncommon for them. So it was very frustrating already. Like the first 5 minutes, you couldn't really play the thing that I consider to be very easy. Well, maybe besides the point, but the thing that he said, I remember having trouble strumming a G chord. I remember teaching this to a high-level guitar player, and she had trouble playing this. And lots of people have actually trouble with this chord, just because of this two-finger thing. Well, I think it's an important thing to actually develop, especially for gypsy jazz guitar, that you can fret two notes like this, and still be able to play a note on the string right below it, like that. Because there's tons of utility for that, like this D6 chord. They have like two basses, like a D and A, or A and a D, and then also have this F sharp there, or this chord. right? It's a A flat sharp 9, where you have, and then, okay, let's go on.
If you're not actively trying to get better, like, what are you doing? So in order to reignite that spark, I knew I would have to find something challenging. And if challenge is the avenue that we're pursuing, I know exactly what I have to do. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to try and learn jazz. Now, you talk to any guitar player out there and they will tell you about jazz. Jazz, I feel like in the guitar world, is seen as this next level thing. Like, if you can play jazz, you can kind of play anything else. So it's a road I've never gone down, and in a lot of ways it's a road that I very intentionally kind of avoided. And not only are we going to try and learn jazz, we're going to try and master jazz within 7 days.
You know, I've heard this many times. Like, if you can play jazz guitar, you can play anything. I've actually seen a workshop teacher start a gypsy jazz workshop like that. Like, I was also teaching there, but then I happened to catch the first part, and he said, you know, guys, gals, if we can play gypsy jazz, we can play anything, right? Yeah, and everybody agreed. But this is actually not true at all. And I know that because I think this myth came into the world because most people don't start with jazz or gypsy jazz. They start with blues or rock or metal or bluegrass, country, and they get a hang of it, and it's working, and they find it to be comfortable to play, and then they start learning jazz, and then it seems so difficult, and then they meet another guy that can play jazz, but they can also play bluegrass, for example, or rock, and you start to think, you know what, like the guys that can play jazz, they can play all the other things, but because most people started with another style, most jazz players can also play another style, right? And they develop that separately. Because for me, I can only play jazz on guitar. Gypsy jazz, but also regular jazz. I cannot do anything else. So I know that it is not true because when I don't know I met a guitar player, Emmett Mahoney, and he was showing me some Beach Boys stuff because he has a band that plays Beach Boys, but instrumentally. And he showed me some stuff with just some basic chords. And I actually had trouble playing that. I could play it, but not like this. Just because those chords were all very foreign to me. And I just, for instance, like this chord, right? It's a very easy chord. I know it's a very easy chord, D7. But I never play D7 like this. I play D7 like this. Or like this, or like this, right? Or like this, or like that, or like this. But not like this. So this chord, it took me a while to be able to play this chord. It feels weird to me. This is like the most normal D7 chord you can play. For most guitar players, it would be very easy. But imagine never having played that. I played this one, right? A sus, but not D7. Just an example of the illusion of jazz being the most difficult thing. I don't think that's true. For instance, bluegrass is usually much faster. I think the picking for bluegrass is very difficult to master. Maybe more difficult than gypsy jazz picking. For rock guitar, you need to be, or pop guitar, let's say, you need to be an expert in effects and what works and how to set your effects with the amp. I know nothing about that at all. Like the bending in blues, I don't know anything about bending in blues because if we play gypsy jazz, there are some bends, but not so much, right? We never bend more than a half step. So it's an illusion to think that if you can play jazz, you can play anything.
You might be looking at me like, Mike, it took Charlie Parker, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, like their entire lives to master jazz. And to that I say, they never had Marty Schwartz. So I'm going to try and do it in 7 days. Exactly 168 hours. Now, the other thing I know is that mastering jazz is a very broad statement, right? There are so many elements of jazz. So I tried to pick the elements that would challenge me the most, that I feel like would promote the most progress in my playing. Number one is a prepared piece. I want to choose a piece of music that would really challenge me both harmonically and melodically to see if I could learn it on the guitar, something outside of my comfort zone, both speed-wise and technique-wise. Number two, I want to get an understanding of our...
You see, that I would never do. A prepared piece, that's not jazz. I'm assuming he's talking about like a Lenny Tristano theme or something, or a bebop theme. But there's tons of jazz musicians that don't play those, or cannot play a Lennon Tristano piece, but still great jazz musicians. So this has nothing to do with jazz. It's an element of jazz. But if I would learn jazz guitar in 7 days, I would never spend my time learning a Tristano theme or a Charlie Parker theme. I understand why you would do it for a YouTube video, though, because that's something you could learn like a classical piece and then you can play it. It's not jazz, though.
Arpeggios. I preach and preach about like target notes and like doing that in a blues context, but rarely ever really use it. And I know using that with jazz is like the most integral thing ever. And third is improvising. You talk to any
so what was the second
like
thing?
myself, they're going to take a lot of pride in their ability. And I know using that. Number two, I want to get an understanding of arpeggios. I preach and preach about like target notes and like doing that in a blues context, but rarely ever really use it. And I know using
understanding of arpeggios. Well, let's see what he means by that. But that's also not something I would spend a lot of time on. But I know that I'm unusual. I have an unusual opinion about that. So let's wait what that means.
That with jazz is like the most integral thing ever. And third is improvising. You talk to any blues player like myself, they're going to take a lot of pride in their ability to improvise on the spot. But for me, that's one of the areas where more recently I've been really disappointed with my playing. So learning a completely new realm of improvisation, I feel like would take a lot of my playing to the next level. Now, saying all this is
okay, interesting 3 points. I would, let's say, if somebody would come to me and said, I want to do a YouTube video and I want to make a video called I've learned to play jazz guitar in 7 days. Can you give me three points for my list? The first point, and that would be a big point, right? It would be swing timing. That would be the first thing. You gotta spend time working on your swing timing. Swing eighth. I'm talking mainly about swing eighth notes, so you have to do exercises for that with a metronome. Now, I know that might be very boring, but that is actually the most important thing. It's not on this list. Second thing, he says improvising. Yes, but I would specifically say improvising on either blues or rhythm changes, because it's very important to be fluent, especially in rhythm changes. Blues is debatable because, for instance, in gypsy jazz, there is not much blues, right? But in regular jazz or like bebop, it's a lot of blues. So I would either say improvise on a blues form, like a jazz blues form, or rhythm changes. I'll be very specific about that. If you don't want to do that, then choose some other tunes that are very specific tunes. Okay, I'm going to improvise on a modal tune like Little Sunflower or So What, and a more tonal tune like Not Too Difficult, maybe Autumn Leaves, or what else is a good tune to start with? Like Sweet Georgia Brown, something like that. And then this, for a third point, I would say I would work on for guitar, probably important to work on your sound or something, but maybe even more important would be like comping, like what kind of chords do I have to play to make something sound like jazz? So right, we're not gonna play this for G, right? We're gonna learn to play G major 7 or G6 or G major 11. So there's some interesting chords, or how do I play 2-5-1 on guitar? Learn some ways to play interesting harmonic, or to play a harmonic progression with interesting chord voicings. Those would be my 3. Now, his 3 are completely different, so I wonder what the results will be.
Cool. Making plans is great, but if you never put those plans into action, you're not going to do anything with your life. And I didn't really know where to start, so I actually ended up calling one of my friends for some help.
Dude, how's it going?
What up? You see, this is my friend Grant. He's a Belmont guitar grad, a huge Polyphia fan, and happens to be an excellent guitar teacher. So I asked him to show me some stuff and actually give me some pointers before I got going, because I wanted to know from someone who actually knows jazz, like, where in the world do I even start? Like, what do I need to be learning? Let's learn some jazz.
Dude, let's do it. I'm super excited about it. The main one we're learning is just kind of chord tones and how to build a solo around some chord tones.
Very difficult, but I'm open.
That's that could work. I do that a lot with violin. Maybe a little bit more fleshed out than only that, but On guitar, I wouldn't really do that, but the reason for that is because my guitar playing is very shapes-based. But here's the thing. He's a blues player, right? The original creator of this video. Probably it's a lot of bass, shapes-based. So it's actually good maybe to start jazz as a blues player in shapes. Much easier to wrap your head around that instead of like learning the third and the seventh of every chord and then improvising.
So we're doing just 2 5-1s in the key of C, gonna kind of keep it simple-ish.
Okay.
And so with that, we're gonna start off first with our D minor 7. Yep, just like that. And so we're kind of trying to build all of these chords around our 1, our 3s, or for minors, flat 3s,
Okay.
5s, and then 7s, whatever kind of degree that is.
Okay.
And so for our D, we've got D, F.
Okay, so this chord, I'm not saying it's never used in jazz, but who uses this for D minor 7 in a 2-5-1? I don't know. That's very unusual, right? You would always do this, or right, something like that. This is really not jazz to play this in a 2-5-1. That's already. I wouldn't do that because it doesn't give you the right frame of reference when you start improvising and you hear this behind you. I mean, yeah, you could play the jazz licks on it, but it wouldn't be better to have with that 9 there, right? That makes more sense, or even with an 11. But okay.
Where's he at?
A. Yep. And then C. And then back to D.
Or big question
Yeah.
is like, where do I start? Because like usually if we were playing like a 2-5-1,
Yeah.
I would just go straight pentatonic.
Yep.
But like, do I start with the pentatonic and then go to the chord tones from there, or do I start with the chord tones and then fill things in?
I would start with the chord tones to generally kind of structure, anchor yourself.
All right, so the lesson's going great at this point. I'm really learning a lot. It's a lot of information to take in, but I think
Okay, what would I do? Let's say this is I have to give the lesson, and then we're busy with 2-5-1. Actually, the first thing I would do, I would play this chord first of all, but then I would just teach him this. I would teach him that. So 3, 4. That's too big. 3, 4. Something like that, and maybe something else. Maybe something like that. 2 like shapes or licks. The first one is really a shape that you can play around with. Maybe this one. Just some licks that sound great, sound very jazzy. And then I would say, okay, let's just jam with those licks. Let's put a D minor. And then just play solos. Get some timing in there. And this was actually not very difficult to do, right? You got those 3 shapes and you just improvise. That's what I would do.
I think that's just jazz in general. And then Grant, my teacher, suggests that we actually try some chord tone soloing. And that's when I realized jazz is hard.
So let's just kind of take a second and work through that a little bit. I'll just kind of loop it and let you start to figure it out just a little bit, or kind of tinker around with some of these ideas.
All right, let's do this.
Okay, what's this? What kind of voicing? Oh, wait, no, wait. Let me see. Okay. So, okay, I played this for G7. You know, I've never played this in my life. But yeah, that's an inverse for G7. I would never play this for G7 in the jazz context. Never. That's not very jazzy, right? Maybe it's the best follow-up for this chord, by the way. And then he plays G major 7, C major 7. But I would play. Something like that. But that's the first thing. The second thing is this rhythm that is being played is a straight rhythm, right? You don't play swing over this. You play 3, 4. So I get that it works in a jazz context, but if we really want to get into jazz, then we have to swing. And I wouldn't then start with a straight rhythm, just because it's so far away from what jazz is mostly. But yeah, that's a choice. But these chord voicings, that is not something that inspires people to play jazz licks, I think.
I'm still going back. Yeah. So yes, as you can...
You know, that lick that he just played is a great lick. That's a beautiful lick. It's not pentatonic at all. There's this 9 here. So that's a great lick. I would stay there. So let's do something with that. Let's stay with that idea or something like that.
You can see it was very difficult for me to solo like that and not immediately go to like my usual pentatonic scales. But I was ready to be active about what I learned and to try some of these new things. So I'm listening back to just like the first 30 seconds of Donna Lee so far, and I'm like, this is going to be an impossible task, but something I want to take on. Okay.
Okay, so the point where prepared piece is probably he's going to learn the Donna Lee theme. And yeah, that's a really a worthwhile thing to do, but I wouldn't do it in my first 7 days. This is more like classical practicing. It's like where you just learn. You play a metronome and you just play it over and over. And yeah, I've done that. Many people have done that, but you don't have to be able to do that to just play, to be a professional. Let's say you don't have to be able to do that to be a professional jazz musician. So that's not something that I would then put in the list of things to learn to play jazz guitar in the first 7 days, especially. But maybe not ever, right? There's tons of jazz musicians that never played Donna Lee and are still great players.
I got that. That's hard. Why do they do this with jazz, man? I'm gonna bring out the metronome. We're gonna put it less than half. We're
Wow,
at
he's using
50
metronome.
BPM. This
Good.
is less than half. Literally just looped one chord and I'm gonna solo over it.
Is it looping on D minor? Notice that the chord on the backing is actually... So he's choosing a better chord here than he was the teacher was making him improvise on it. Because this is actually a good chord for a 2-5-1 in C, I think. Day 2.
Shoot. Whenever I mess up, all I can think is I wish J.K. Simmons was here to yell at me and motivate me. The next phrase is like 10 times harder. I just listened to it for the first time and I was like, oh, this is gonna stink. Got that.
Does he have tap there, or what is it? I think so, right? Must be tap there.
I think this phrase is easy because of the minor triads, but I'm also struggling because it's just like it's a lot to choose, so I don't know if I'm even gonna try the full one to do it today.
So you have to spend so much time learning this theme that the most important stuff you get lost, right? It's already day 3 of 7 days, and the only thing I've heard so far is practicing the first part of the Donna Lee theme and starting over D minor 7. That's why I said, just choose rhythm changes, learn some concepts for rhythm changes, maybe learn to play diminished on rhythm changes, learn to play some minor 6 on rhythm changes, some blues rhythm changes, then try to tackle the bridge, learn to play over a dominant chain. Man, that would be so much more useful. And I think you could do that in 7 days. You could not reach a high level in 7 days. You could not even reach a high level in 7 months. But you could actually experience better what jazz is all about than doing this. But of course, I think he decided on these points himself. I'm not sure how much he researched into it, right? This would be similar to me as trying to learn metal and then just deciding on it myself. I think I should consult some high-level metal guitar players to give me a list that makes sense for metal guitar players if I want to do a challenge like that. Maybe I'll do that someday. Who knows?
This second part is uniquely frustrating to me, so I'm taking it literally like one bite at a time. Just like, starting with just that. The last part was not really easy. It was a lot easier, and I don't think the notes, I don't feel like it's that much more of a difficult part, but I'm just having so much trouble memorizing it. Okay, I have most of this phrase now. 3, 4. We're consistent.
So if you look at his picking hand here, I see a lot of, I don't know if he's really conscious of the picking there. I see some downstrokes in a row that were not necessary. Now I'm not saying that it's impossible, of course, as a gypsy jazz player, like double downs. But with this technique, it's not gypsy jazz technique. It's more, seems to be more like maybe like economy picking style, or maybe it's not alternate. I don't know what it is. Probably more economy. Then how you're gonna play with that picking in the usual tempo of Donna Lee, which probably would be around 250, no, maybe 230 or something, 220 and up. It's gonna be very difficult to do it like that. So that's why I always say, if you practice some incredibly difficult jazz lick or solo or theme, make sure that you've got the picking, that you made the picking choices based on what you gotta play it when you have to play it in the real tempo, which is probably not this pattern of picking.
I'm at around 70% right now. I'm still like, my brain hurts. Oh, this is gonna be impossible. I swear, when it comes to scales, if I ever have to hear a D minor 9 again, I don't know if I'll be able to pick up a guitar. It's day 3 and I can still feel like it's just D minor.
So I think improvising, trying out improvisation on one chord is very useful, right? I do that a lot. I've advocate for that in my books. I show very clearly how to do it. But what jazz actually is, or what an important part of jazz improvisation is actually connecting chords. Being able to play a continuing line that connects 2 chords, or 3 chords, or however many chords you want, without stopping. So then you need to be aware of where shapes, if you play shapes like me, where shapes connect. So if, let's say you play 2-5-1 to C, then let's say we take a jungle lick like this. If you're now aware that here I'm going to G, so in that case, it's a good thing to realize, oh, so I can connect chromatically up from an A to a B. Or maybe you play, so then you can connect this 9 with a flat 13 on G. That's one way to practice these connections. Another way is to don't think about the numbers, but just connect shapes. So let's say you have this shape, and for G you have well, let's say let's say yeah, let's do this. So that's actually A flat minor 6 arpeggio, but I'm playing it on G7. So now you have to just remember, oh, I can connect this shape from the C down to the B. And then I have to connect to a C major chord, so I can connect there. So those connections are actually much more important than what you play on the chord itself. especially when you start out learning tunes, you have to practice the connections. And the easy part about that, or the difficult part about it, is firstly that that it goes very fast, right? So if you don't start on the correct beat in the beginning, especially, and you miss the connection, you might get confused, right? So you have to actually practice it starting on the correct beat to have the connection exactly on the right place, but then also practice it earlier so that you get used to changing too early, right? Anticipating the chords, but also practice it starting later to anticipate, or to not anticipate, but to delay the connection, and to have your brain recognize that that is also a good sound. Actually, sometimes it sounds better. But in the beginning, that's very difficult because you feel like, oh, I missed the chord change. But no, you don't have to change exactly when the chord changes. You can be late. You can be early. So that's the difficult thing about it. But the easy thing about it is that jazz harmony is limited to not an unlimited amount of chord progressions, possible chord progressions. Right? Basically, you have 2 5 1, so you need to be able to connect the 2 to the 5 to the 1, both in major and minor. You have turnarounds, so you need to be able to connect a 1 6 2 5 back to a 1. You have dominant chains, so you need to be able to connect a row of dominants. What else is there? Well, there's the minor cliché, right? You have to be able to play on these kinds of chords. Right, so there's maybe, let's be generous and say that maybe there's 15 chord progressions. I think there's less, but once you can play on those chord progressions, you can almost play any tune. Now, there might be some difficult spots in some tunes because of irregular bars, right? Maybe it's a weird 2-5-1 with the 2 chord being 3 bars, something like that, right? But you can tackle that when you learn that specific tune. But once you are fluent on those chord progressions, then improvising jazz doesn't seem that impossible anymore. Day 4.
Day 4. I really pushed myself at 120. Now, just the part, just slow, very slow. Like yesterday, I'm starting out very slow.
Too much time spent on Donnelly, I think.
That was close. It's not flowing.
There you can actually see the picking is not very efficient, and now it becomes difficult actually to play it in this tempo. It starts to lose the fluency.
But that's at 100%.
Yeah, I will give
day 5.
Good question. I will think about that. I will do it after the video's over. We're 2/3 of the way.
I started slow, like I always do, and I've been getting the pull-off wrong on the first lick, the lick that I thought I had 120.
By the way, I didn't say that, but somebody in the chat, if you watch this on YouTube, is asking if I can give a brief list of those progressions I was just talking about.
Which I think is the reason why you do things slow. So I'm bringing this one down just to like 60%, just to see if I can get the whole thing right, because I don't want to get part of it wrong. Yep, we got it. I keep forgetting that if you're going to be a jazz guy, you need to turn the tone knob down.
No, don't turn the tone up down. Use the bridge pickup. Do the tone, well, but of course this is a strat, right? But on an art stop, definitely don't put the tone up down. Maybe on the strat, I don't know, maybe you should. I don't have a strat, so.
It's the slide. Hey! Today I'm tired because I was out all day and I don't really want to practice.
Day 6.
I know you won't get any better unless you practice when you don't want to practice.
You know what? I want to say something about that. In fact, no. You know what? I'll talk about it later because in my discussion, when we take a look at the Discord discussion, I say it as well. But I'm going to say it here. Like one way to get around burning yourself out with practice is to not practice anything that bores you, except for technique. You have to practice technique every day. Just do it 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. I have some exercise that you can do. Do that every day. Just set a timer and be very concentrated while you do it. 15 minutes. But after that time, only practice something that captivates you, that motivates you to learn it. And then practice it exactly as long as it doesn't bore you. If you get bored, switch. Because anything you do after that point with that specific subject won't do much for you. You're bored, you're frustrated, you start to hate it. So let's say you're learning the theme of Donna Lee, which I don't recommend if you want to start learning jazz, but let's say you do it, and after like 30 minutes you get very frustrated, just stop it. Start doing something else. Maybe you want to work on tremolos, or you want to work on some comping, then do that. Again, for as long as it's not boring to you. And that way, you're always excited about the things you're practicing, because you don't have to learn that thing that day at that moment, unless you have a gig, of course. But then you will be motivated because you have the gig. But otherwise, I never practice anything that I'm not enthusiastic about. And once I lose my enthusiasm, which often happens, I switch to something else. And then maybe the next day or the next week, I get back to the first subject because I'm pumped for it again.
I want to try playing this with my eyes closed, because I hear that's the way to really get a song down. I knew I messed up one. I knew it.
Is that true, though? I'm not sure, because I think research has been done looking at this is what I heard, but this is also what I heard as a child. Like, if you have something difficult to play, the way to minimize mistakes is actually look at your fingers. And when you don't look at your fingers, specifically look at the limb, or in this case it's either left or right hand that is making the mistake. If you look at it, you have a better chance of succeeding at the task. So playing with closed eyes, maybe it's a good way to only listen to the notes, but you can also do that while singing. I think singing is very helpful for that. To actually solve a technical problem. I'm not sure he's doing that. Maybe he's just trying to memorize it. But then you can also do the singing. But for solving a technical problem, you should actually look at the hand that is causing the problems.
I'm tired. I've been waiting a lot of bars on 251, so I'm like, it's time. We're just going to do it full speed. It's really hard. Oh my gosh, my respect for jazz players is crazy. Because I have to even think before I press play. I'm like, wait, which one is D minor?
So, the good thing about what we just heard was that he's connecting the chords, right? He's not waiting for the chord to change, which is a problem that many people have. But the not so good thing is that they actually didn't really outline those changes. It was, again, mostly staying around a couple of notes. I'm not sure, maybe it was pentatonic, but I didn't really hear the change from what is changing here. The C is going to a B, right? And then I don't really, you should be able to hear, and you might say, wow, that's a great way to do it, but that's just a lick I've learned. And that's the other point. Just learn some great 251 licks. If you would have gone to my YouTube channel, you could have gotten hundreds of great 251 licks. Just learn 4 of them and play those in those improvs, and try to be creative with them, right? If I teach you this lick, you can be creative with that one already. You just do, or right? Just do anything. Just move your fingers, but go back to the lick in some way, or play some notes before it. So instead of you do, or maybe. And then play something after it. Right? And you don't need theory for that. You can just sing what you think sounds nice. Right? I play the lick. What can I play? Da da dee ba da ba da. Da 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 da. Right? You don't need theory for that or some specific secret knowledge. Once you learn the lick, you sing with the backing track, right? You sing something that sounds nice to you. And if you can't find anything, then and you get frustrated with it, what do? You go to the next thing.
All right, it's the final day. Final day. All right, I'm just trying to take it slow still. It's day 7, I'm trying to take it slow. It's getting a little better, right?
Again, so this rhythm he's using is a straight rhythm, right? It's bossa nova. So that's part of the jazz tradition, but it's not really jazz. Like if you want to do this experiment, then really go for jazz. This would be me saying I'm gonna learn bluegrass in 7 days and then playing jambalaya or something. It's part of the tradition, but it's not really what we're looking for when we say bluegrass, right? You have to play a bluegrass tune. I can't think of any titles now, but like play some Tony Rice thing or something.
So it's been 7 days and I'm kind of scared, but it's time to see, like full speed, can I play this lick? See how it goes. I'm equally as scared to show the solo part to see how much progress I've made.
Well, that was only the first part, though, Lee. So it was not bad. But the one thing that was missing, and that was already I said it in the first part, it's the consistent swing eighth notes, right? You want to be right? The swing is actually more important even than the notes, and this is of course very, very slow. Nobody's playing John Lee in this tempo, so even if you spend 7 days on this, which is not unuseful, but you would not be able to play it in a real live session because nobody's gonna play it like that. Everybody's playing. Everybody's gonna play in that tempo, which is just very hard. And then there's not even the most important part because probably a lot of people are gonna play that with you, right? Unison. But then the most important part is the solo after that. And that's when it really counts what you do. So that's why I said like spending your time on this is not really spending time on learning jazz. This is more like classical practice, something like that.
It on there.
Okay, so that first thing that he did is this, what's that called? That's a rake. That never happens in jazz. Django did it sometimes, right? Maybe... like, that's the typical Django thing, but that's very typical Django. I don't really hear that by other people. Joshua Stephan does it sometimes. And even when Django does it, it's like within like lots of other interesting stuff. So if you start to sort of like, that is really not jazz. So that's what I mean. Like if you give somebody some like jazz vocabulary, like specific jazz vocabulary, like a lick, like a phrase, then the first thing you will play will actually sound very good immediately. So on the rhythm, he's choosing to play it's triplets. Now, it's not swinging, right? So it's straight. But even like playing continuous triplets, even though that is a thing, it's not really a big thing. It's more in gypsy jazz. It happens more than, for instance, in bebop. Like listen for like Pasquale Grasso or something. He rarely plays like continuing triplets. Or Charlie Parker. It's not really a thing that happens a lot. So that is also not a very jazzy choice. Again, I go back to learn some good vocabulary, like a lick, and you will solve that immediately, like within 10 seconds. So here he's connecting the one to the next two. Nothing wrong with that, but that is also not a skill that is very important in jazz, because that rarely happens that you have the same 2-5-1 in a row. It's better to be able to connect the other 3 chords and actually stop at the C, right? You do like right? You stop. You play a stopping line there, because that's actually how jazz usually works, right? You play a song like Honeysuckle Rose, right? And then we're in the bridge. The bridge is a 2-5-1 to B flat, and then it's A flat 7. So you're playing a 2-5-1 lick to B flat, 3, 4, and then it's A flat 7. So being able to play those ending phrases or stopping phrases is actually a very important part of jazz. All jazz styles. Well, yeah, all jazz styles. Gypsy jazz, bebop, beyond that, it's important that you make that a big part of your 2-5-1 practice.
So looking back on that immediately, I can see some of the flaws that I had in playing that riff. Like, I was really happy with the progress that I was able to make, but it's not perfect yet. And it's not something I feel like I could instantly bring to a jazz jam yet. And I think that's because it's not smooth. And I think that's because I was really trying to push myself a little bit speed-wise, not as fast as some of the other guys who play Donnelly at 200 BPM. But I think they were...
And even 200 BPM is pretty slow for Donnelly. Let me see. Maybe, am I mistaken? Let me get a metronome here. What is the regular tempo for Donnelly? I don't think it's 200. Is it 200? I'm not talking about the original recordings, but even that must be faster. Let me see. Let's see. What's 240 like? I think 240 actually. Can you hear that? Yeah, you can. That's actually, I think, closer to the tempo of Donnelly. And that is actually the most important part. It's the improv, right? It's not that theme which I played. Okay, could be better. But at 200, come on, that's not a tempo. That's really Donnelly. Let me see. No, I can see that. Yeah, that could be a version like that. Maybe the original of Cheddar Parker is like that, but nobody plays it like that anymore. Or not nobody. Well, that's maybe not nobody, but I haven't played it like in that tempo in the last 10 years. Okay.
There were a couple rough moments where it wasn't as smooth as it could be, and you could definitely hear some pick noise. And I actually contacted one of my friends, an incredible YouTube guitarist, one of the best out there in my opinion, named Rudy Ayub, on some advice on playing fast. And he actually told me about my picking hand and how I needed to pick way lighter to be able to really glide along the string. So thank you.
Pick lighter. That's an interesting discussion, because in gypsy jazz there are a lot of heavy-handed pickers. Even some very famous ones, like I can't think of his name, but there's a not Dorado Schmidt, but not Samson Schmidt, Chavlo Schmidt, Chavlo, yeah. So Chavlo is a very heavy-handed picker. Of course, it's really I've seen that like from very up close. It's really like a strong sound, and he doesn't. Well, he can actually play much faster than you think with that heavy picking, but it's a certain kind of sound. So there are other heavy pickers like Cha, and also a duvet can pick with a lot of force, and there's more people like that, and it's not bad, you know. It's a really strong sound. Now, my picking style is a little bit lighter. It's more like Stochelo or Moses, but it's still not super light. So I don't know what super light is. I think the way he was picking wasn't very heavy-handed, but it might be different though on a Strat. Or maybe he was picking too heavy for a Strat. But on the gypsy guitar, you have to make some sound, man. And this guitar actually is an Altamira Model D, right? The cheapest one, because I thought for fun, or I felt like playing this today. And the strings are not very low, so you have to put some force into it. So I'm not sure the picking light is the solution. Let's see what Rudy,
Thank you, Rudy, for
said,
that.
by the
You want
way.
some advice on playing fast.
By the way, this, I don't know if you know this guitar player, Rudy Ayoub, but definitely check out his YouTube channel. He's a great player, first of all, but he makes comedy sketches, and they are so funny. I was totally addicted to his channel. I've watched everything, like in a week or something. It's great stuff.
And he actually told me about my picking hand.
Let's see what he says here. The less you dig the pick on the strings, the easier it will glide. That is true, but I think the thing after it is very important. Loosen your grip. Loosen your grip. That is the most important thing. Like when people ask me, Christiaan, I have a lot of trouble playing at the gig. At home, I can play everything, and it's very smooth. But once I go to the gig, I lose everything. And there's many reasons for that. But mostly it's stress related, like you're tensing up. And the first thing to check is actually how firmly are you holding onto your pick. It has to be very loose. Like I always say, it has to move with the string, right? If this is a string, the pick is actually kind of, can you see that? Like the pick is really moving with the string. And that gives you the snapping sound, because you want the pick to kind of be stuck behind the string, and then it snaps. And it gives you a lot of sound without having to push very hard. Because if you push and you grip the pick, then your whole hand becomes the pick. Now that's gonna be very debilitating. It's gonna be very bad for your speed abilities, let's say like that. Just keep a loose grip. And the first thing to check when you feel things are not working is to check your grip here. So maybe shake your hand, feel a little bit what it feels like to play with a loose grip, and then start playing again.
And how I needed to pick way lighter to be able to really glide along the string. So thank you, Rudy, for that. And that's one of the things I was really trying to get down during the last couple days, is trying to pick lighter in terms of trying to gain that speed. And that's something I really want to work on going forward. But then amongst the arpeggios and like practical applications in an improvising context, that's where I also had to check myself after 7 days. And again, it's something that wasn't in any way, shape, or form perfect, but it felt like I was finally paying attention to the chord tones and finally starting to use the major scale a little bit more like a jazz player. But overall, the big question.
What is that, using the major scale like a jazz player? Let's see. If I would answer that question, I would say you have to learn some arpeggios that are in the major scale. Let's say you played on the one chord, you have to learn the major 7 arpeggio. And that's it, probably. Maybe learn to play some enclosures, like. But again, then we're not talking about the major scale anymore. So I would actually never talk about the major scale. I know a lot of people do that in jazz. Like the major scale gives you everything you need, which is probably true, like theoretically spoken, if you look at the solos. But just practically, I wouldn't waste any time. I have actually never learned to play the major scale on the guitar until I did it for fun, let's learn to play the major scale in 7 positions or 5 positions. And then I did that, and I was like, okay, well. And now, and the funniest thing is, there was a whole discussion about this a very long time ago on a site, on a forum. And I that was when I wasn't really playing guitar. It was a long time ago, like 12 years ago. And then I was already working with Stockholm, and I said in the forum, it was like, these forum fights, I said, guys, what are you talking about? I know the best player in the world, and he doesn't know any major skill. And people couldn't believe it. But then I went to see Stockholm a couple of days later because we were shooting videos for the Rosenberg Academy. And I asked him, like, can you play a major scale? Of course, he said, well, I don't know, what is a major scale? So I showed him the notes of a major scale. I showed him, like, something like that, right? So he figured it out pretty fast. So he played it a couple of times, and then I said, can you play it here? He figured it out too, and then he did that. We were doing that for like 15 minutes. And then he said, what's the point of this? I said, well, it's because it will give you some notes that you can play over this chord. He said, but I would never play that in a solo. What's the point? And that's true, right? Because he would never play that. Maybe he would play something like this. No. Something like that, maybe, which is based on a major scale, but then he would just practice that, right? Because on G major, he would mostly play something like this. Now, as you can see, there's lots of chromatic stuff there. There's lots of like interval jumps, so it's better to practice that immediately than first start learning the major scale. Spend a lot of time on that, right? Maybe you learn it in 5 positions, maybe 7 positions. All keys, you're gonna spend like 2 years on that, but you'll never use any of that, well, not a lot of that in your solo, because again, jazz soloing is about connecting chords. It's not about being able to play on one chord necessarily.
Can you master jazz guitar in a week? Heck no, man. I'm no like Wes Montgomery level prodigy, but the bigger question...
But even Wes Montgomery didn't learn it in a week, right? Let's be clear about that.
I think I'm happy. I'm not happy with my guitar playing, but I'm happy that the spark is kind of back as a player who wants to practice more, and I think that's what this is about. In the end, I didn't master jazz guitar, but I think the thing that I learned, I think even more than learning some new stuff about jazz guitar, I learned how to practice, and I learned how to be excited about practice for the first time in a very long time. Even within this week, I wasn't just practicing jazz. I went back to practicing a lot of my pentatonic stuff and a lot of the rock stuff that I was really having trouble mastering. And it showed me how to slow down a song, how to really take the small elements and how to go into some of those technical aspects, like what Rudy was talking about when I was struggling with speed, and really break stuff down. And I hope to continue. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you want to know anything more about jazz, make sure to check out Grant. I'll leave all his stuff in the description. It's been a fun journey. Like and subscribe if you had a good time, and most important of all, like most importantly, have a fantastic day.
Nice video though, right? He's I think it's a great video. It's really well done. He showed very well what he was working on. Of course, I don't agree with the way he approached learning jazz, but I mean, it's a YouTube video. I would just say, hey man, if you ever see this reaction video, Mike Cole is his name, contact me, and then I'll give you a free YouTube lesson, and then for YouTube a free Zoom lesson, and then I will promise you you will learn much more in that one lesson that you did this week, specifically about playing jazz, right? I'll give you some stuff that you can apply immediately and sound very jazzy. But nice video. I'll put the link in the description in YouTube, and give him a like.